Well, hello and welcome to another edition of 7 for 12 and Hat Trick with Harmy. Another busy show, three massive topics of the week. We'll preview the England-West Indies Test Series, the Women's World Cup, and the eagerly awaited Australia's tour to Pakistan. And I've also got my good mate, he's back. John Norman, TalkSport's very own, is back with us. Great to see you, John. It's been a long time. Hopefully safe travels are back in the UK now. But we've got some pretty exciting cricket coming up, not just for TalkSport, but for us too as well, to talk about over the course of the next 3 or 4 weeks in the Caribbean.
I know. And was it really 3 years ago that we were out there? It was a fantastic series back in 2019. Did not go the way that we thought it would. Most people thought England were going to beat West Indies, and of course, West Indies went 2-0 up. And then, of course, Mark Wood bowled one of the fastest spells of bowling ever by not just an Englishman, I would say by anybody ever. It was an incredible end to the series, but England lost it. Fast forward to 2022, and I think most people are kind of thinking that it's West Indies who may well win, especially after Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson were left out. But big news from the camp, and they are actually underway now. The warm-up has started. Alex Lees has opened up alongside Zach Crawley. And Dan Lawrence has been selected ahead of Ollie Pope. It's a 12-man team, but Ollie Pope is not part of that. So any surprise there? Because it was always going to be a call between one of those two. We knew one of them was going to drop out, but it does appear that Dan Lawrence has got the nod. And whatever happens over the next 4 days, he is in possession of a number 5 or 6 batting spot in that team.
Yeah, it's no great surprise. I think they've got to have a look at Dan Lawrence. I think they've had a brief look now and again, but not a consistent look. And hopefully now they've made the decision. I think they've decided that Pope's had enough chances now. He smashes it at first-class cricket level. I've got my theories, or not theories on it, but my opinions on it. I think this team would be a much, and I've got nothing against Ben Foakes. I hear people talk to me and say, "Oh, you keep putting Ben Foakes down," but when you've got someone like Johnny Bairstow, who I know wants to keep wicket, he wants to be the wicketkeeper batsman. When you've got Bairstow, who could potentially bat at number 7 off the back of an Ashes 100, and you can also have Ollie Pope in your side, I actually think that's a better batting unit. Now, Ben Foakes undoubtedly is the best wicketkeeper, gloveman probably in the world. But he's going to get his chance, and good luck to him. But I just think the time has run out for Ollie Pope, and he's going to have to go and get some runs for Surrey when he goes back to England if he doesn't get a chance in the Caribbean. But I think Dan Lawrence deserves his chance. Look at the England squad there. Look, we've been told we're going on a fact-finding mission. We've been told that we're going to have a look at new bowlers because we've not got Broad or Anderson. It looks as though we're going to pick the same bowling unit that we played in Brisbane. I don't think Overton will play in the first Test match. I think Leach will play a big part, or Spin will play a big part in Antigua of the three Test matches. And again, like you mentioned, right at the very top, England going into a Caribbean tour, probably with as good a chance as they've been for a long time of winning over there, because I look at this West Indies side. I don't think it's a very good side. I think England are a better side on paper, but unfortunately, you don't get runs on paper, and there's a lot going to have to happen from Joe Root going to number 3 to get runs for England going forward. So I look at this, John, and I'll throw it to you. You look at the West Indies side. We've seen some of them in the short format of the game, but I look at the West Indies squad and it doesn't stand out to me and think, well, that's a better team than what England is, even without Broad and Anderson.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Look, you were part of the only England side that has won in the Caribbean since 1954. Now, of course, during that period, they had one of the all-time great sides. And I don't need to list the names. We all know them. But essentially, England have been back in 2009. They lost 1-0. And bowled out for 51 in Jamaica. They went back in
Thanks for that. Yeah, I was the one that got the 51st run, but I also got the last. I was out the last wicket.
Well, there you go. Then they went back in what must have been about 2000 and was it 14?
14.
Yeah, they drew 1-1. They lost the last Test match. West Indies chased down a score. Then back in 2019, which we just spoke about 2-1. These weren't stellar West Indies sides, by the way.
No.
England has struggled. England's away record is terrible. And yet here we are, once again, well, you are, suggesting that England are going to turn up and win. And I look at the West Indies side, I think their bowling is as strong now as it's ever been since that great team was dismantled. You know, you've got Alzarri Joseph, you've got Kemar Roach, Jason Searle?
Jason Searle, Jason Holder.
And then, of course, you've got Jason Holder. I don't think Roston Chaser's in the side, nor is Rakeem Cornwall, which is a little bit of a surprise. But they do have spin covered. And they're batting, you know, if you were to look at the ratings, the rankings, you wouldn't see too many West Indies batsmen in the top 20, but you wouldn't see too many Englishmen in the top 20 either. So I certainly wouldn't rule out West Indies from winning. The other thing is that you see the West Indies, they raise their game when they play England. You know, they're playing in front of fans. They liked the fact that they are, because they don't often when it comes to Test cricket in the Caribbean. So yeah, I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be interesting. We've had a question, and do get your questions in. We're here for another 20 minutes or so. We're going to talk about the Cricket World Cup, which takes place in New Zealand, and we're going to talk about Pakistan against Australia. G. Paul has got a question in on that. But the logic behind Rooty at 3, Harmy. This is from Herbert A. And it's a good point. It's a question I asked for at Joe Root. You know, we've had this conversation many, many times over the last few years. You know, so at what point does he decide that he is going to bat at 3? Because he's been saying for years he prefers batting at 4. And we've seen when he bats at 3, his average goes down a lot. So what are your thoughts? You're the selector. You put your hat on. Steve Harmison, would you ask Joe Root, or rather tell him, to bat at 3, or would you keep him at 4?
5 years ago, I told him about 3. 5 years ago, I still stand by the decision. He should have batted at 3, and even in the last 2 years, he should have batted at 3. But his stubbornness, rightly so, because of the amount of runs he's got. I've got no argument. I really haven't. If I'm a selector and I say to Joe, I want you to bat at 3, turns around and gives me the arguments, I've not got a leg to stand on. I can't justify saying to him, no, you bat 3, because of the numbers and where he stands and his stature in the group and the team. And I think I'd bow down to pressure on that one and say, right, I'll go with you on that one. And he batted at 4. He scored runs. He was the Test Player of the Year at number 4. So I'm not sure from a selection group how this has come about. Whether Joe's gone, well, you know what, we keep picking batsmen to bat at number 3, and we can't find anybody to bat at number 3, so I'm going to bat at number 3. I thought Milan did an okay job. I thought he did an okay job. Was Joe going to number 3 to try and get Pope in the side? I think that's a possibility, knowing that Pope or Lawrence couldn't bat at number 3. So that's the logic behind that, to get one of the younger batsmen into a position which is not thrown him into the lion's den at number 3, the problem position. I actually thought Milan he didn't do a great job. He didn't do a bad job. So the logic behind it, would you like Joe going out there at 10 for 1 as opposed to 20 for 2? Or would you rather him going out at 20 for 2? As long as he's not 20, as long as we're not 20 for 2 and he's one of the 2, because he's batting at 3, that for me then would be a huge problem for England, because if that happens, England don't get 200. You know, the history tells us that when Joe gets a low score, England in the last 18 months don't get any more than sort of 220, 250. And then no matter what bowling attack you've got, that doesn't win cricket matches. So I think it must be a personal choice. It must be Joe's choice. I don't think he's been talked into this one. I just think he's probably sick of trying to shoehorn batsmen into places where it's very, very difficult. And he's decided, right, I'm going in myself. I'm going to take responsibility. I'm going to bat 3. and it gives somebody a little bit more of a fighting chance to forge a career for themselves, to get starts batting where it's a little bit easier at number 4. I just hope it doesn't backfire on England, that number 4 doesn't get any runs, and because the ball's nipping about a bit, Joe gets out early and there's a whole load of pressure on our 5, 6 and 7.
I'm just following the action from Coolidge Cricket Ground. You had nothing to do with that Stanford thing, did you? You remember?
Oh, I'd love to say I didn't, but I did. I was there. Yeah, I was there. I was involved. And I haven't seen the documentary. People keep telling me to watch the documentary, and I'll go, no, I went through it. I've seen it. What a shambles it was. The only good thing about it, we didn't win. We didn't win. And that's the best thing I can say about it. We didn't win because
I've just realized I need to talk to you about it. We need to do a whole show about that.
Yeah.
I can't believe we have, in all the years we've known each other, we've never spoken about that.
It's not something I wanted to really shout about, to be honest. I just come out of retirement earlier that summer, later on that summer, and then obviously this was thrown on us. We had the wrong leader in terms of when the decisions were made. It was going where, and that's nothing against Kev. It was just that he wasn't the right person to lead that group against what was happening because of all the financial money that was involved in it. We had a decent side out. We had a good side out. We played on a corrugated wicket against a team like the West Indies, who, you know, when they need to sort of stand up, that's what the West Indies would do. And when the financial resources were on, you see them in the IPL and all the franchises. When there's money involved, the IPL players and the West Indies players stood up, and it was an absolute shambles from start to finish. I'll go into it a bit more in depth, but quite happy to say it wasn't.
Yeah, let's leave that.
Let's the best 10 years of my life, I must admit.
Oh, mate, we're going to have to revisit that. CFC says, if the batters don't score, is Joe going to come out blaming the bowlers like in the Ashes? What has changed?
Oh, well, the batters don't score, then they ain't going to win. It's as simple as that. I think you can say, I look at Joe in the Ashes and that comment of pitching the ball up. He was caught right at the very end of it. It's like a manager going out and speaking after you've just been beat in the last minute when you control the game and you're getting a 96 minute. Yeah, that's it. It's all up. And all of a sudden you're pumped up, you're frustrated. I don't think Joe meant to come out the way he came out and blame the bowlers. Unfortunately, your mouth gets away from yourself sometimes. And he said it, but I don't think the bowlers were at blaming Joe Root's eyes for the Ashes. I think he knows firmly where the blame was. And if he doesn't get runs, I don't see England winning. I really don't, because you've got a side here who history's telling you, 18 months is telling you that we haven't scored enough runs to compete in cricket matches, and we need Joe to be there for a large part of the 3 Test matches, and people get their confidence back of batting in Test match cricket around him. And if he does that, it sets a good platform.
Good stuff. England 5 without loss against the West Indies 11. Alex Lees is 1 from 17, and Zach Crawley 4 from 7. He's nearly out there, Crawley. Okay, let's change tack. Let's talk about the Pakistan versus Australia Test series. We can come back to the England, but we've got 14 minutes left, so get your questions in. And G. Paul says, Asian conditions for Aussies playing in a country after so long, coming from a huge Ashes victory. So what would you say is the main challenge for Australia in this series, Harmy? No warm-up of any real note. So they're going to go into that first test in much like a lot of travelling teams, very little preparation, haven't really acclimatised. So what challenges do you think await Australia?
I think it's about the bowling conundrum of their side. For me, it'll be interesting to see what side Australia pick, whether they go with the fast bowlers that they've done so well for them. They're going to have to either, if they go down the 2-spin route, whether they go with Ashton Agar whether Agar plays. If Ashton Agar plays, it means one of the big guns is coming out. Cummins can't come out. He's got to play. Stark through the air. My time playing against Pakistan, in Pakistan, it was the likes of Mohammed Shami, quick through the air. Shoaib Akhtar, quick, skiddy trajectory through the air on them surfaces. So it might be something like Hazelwood that misses out. But Hazelwood bowls well in Indian conditions, in IPL conditions as well. So it's going to be a big call for the Australians, who they leave out if they're going to play a second spinner to go along with Lyon. They've got an absolute gem in Cameron Green, who balances their side out very, very well. And that would be the challenge for me, the balance of their side. You look at the two squads, and Pakistan have got some pace. You think Harris Rauf, he is quick. Yorkshire, if he gets through these 3 test matches and then gets on a plane and comes to Yorkshire, these Yorkshire members are going to be quite happy if they get 5 games out of the 7 of Harris Rauf, because he is quick. Shaheen Shah Afridi, another one, I think is just getting better and better in international cricket. I see Fahim Ashra's got an injury. He got an injury. I think he got ruled out this morning, along with Hassan Ali, another quick bowler, skiddy trajectory. But Nadeem Shah's, he's back in the squad. I think he's been cleared to go and play. So they've got some pace, have Pakistan. So 2 bowling attacks who will be very, very much with a pace side covered. But you look at the batting unit of Australia, and you'd say if there was 1 or 2 younger players in there, they might struggle early on in the conditions to acclimatise the conditions. But you look at this batting unit from Australia; it's a very, very good batting unit who have got experience, very much experience. If you think Warner, Khawaja, Labuschagne, and Smith as a top 4, I think Australia have got a chance in Pakistan. But Pakistan in their home country will be always strong, and I just think it's brilliant to see. Honestly, Matt, I think it's fantastic. I can't wait for England to go there. I'd love to go there myself. I'd love us to sort of experience that trip again, because it'd be a great news story. It's fantastic to see Pakistan playing at home again. And fingers crossed, everything goes according to plan. Everybody's safe and secure. I thought the PSL was excellent. I thought visually it was very, very good. And apart from James Faulkner, I think everybody seemed to get on very, very nicely with the Pakistan cricket board, and the security went very, very well. So it did look as though it went good, and fingers crossed for the Australian tour as well, because I'd love to see England go there just before Christmas at the end of this year.
England are 6 of that loss, and big shout for leg before wicket to Alex Lees, that he survives. Harris Rauf tested COVID positive, says Austin Cunha, and also another person getting involved. One quick question: Alex Carey. Now he had a tough Ashes towards the end of it. He put down a couple of catches, didn't go for a couple as well. What about wicket keeping in Pakistan? Because that's going to be a new test for him as well.
It is, and it's obviously you've got a lot more standing up to do. That's why when England go to the subcontinent, Ben Foakes has been somebody's been used a lot, because of seeing it's more important to catch it and better glove work than the sort of batting dominant side of the wicketkeeper. Do they go with Josh Inglis? Because Inglis is another one, untried, untested, unknown. Didn't take Matty Wade, so it looks like Carey's going to get the start, but he didn't have a great time in the Ashes. He looked as though he actually looked quite nervous. I thought the occasion got to Carey. He snatched a lot of balls. So from that point of view, it'll be interesting to see how many chances he does get, because if he doesn't get off to a great start, then all of a sudden there might be a question mark on his place. But for me, that's the only negative I see in this Australia unit going to Pakistan, for the simple fact is I think they've got a superstar in Cameron Green. So it means one of their big fast bowlers doesn't play, able to play three seamers of 90 mile an hour, because obviously they've got Green to balance the attack as the third one, as well as playing two spinners, and the 2 spinners would be either a leg spinner and a left arm spinner to go with Nathan Lyon's off spin. I think it's a well balanced Australia side there going to Pakistan.
Okay, let's get through a couple more of the questions. Herbert A says, he's more excited about the Women's World Cup than England's tests against the West Indies. Tammy is my favourite, Tammy Beaumont. Well, it's such a glorious position to find ourselves in, isn't it, with cricket? I mean, essentially, from a UK perspective, at 1 a.m., you'll have a World Cup game. That'll take you through to about 9 a.m. From 5 a.m., you've either got Pakistan against Australia or India against Sri Lanka. There's test matches for all four countries. And then from 2 p.m., it'll be West Indies against England in the tests. So, it's going to be impossible to cover it all. You're, of course, flying out to the Caribbean this weekend. So you're going to be there all throughout March, contributing to TalkSport's coverage as well as BT in England and for the world feed. So it's going to be busy. We're going to try and cover as much of it here as possible. Now, Women's World Cup, and I mean, it's nothing groundbreaking, but when you consider Australia's squad depth and you consider that they've won 29 out of their last 30 ODIs, the fact that they've just beaten England in the Ashes across all three formats, and they're going to be playing in very familiar conditions. It's not totally similar to Australia, though. I mean, New Zealand and Australia, when you think about them, you think they're like France and England, and they're not. They're separated by 3.5 hours of sea, and that's if you go by plane. So the conditions are going to be different, but phenomenally strong side, and very, very difficult to see another side winning. But if you were to select one side to win, and it wasn't Australia, Steve Harmison, which one would you plump for?
I'd go England. I really would. I'd go England. I think England have got a chance. They'll be hoping that the Australian juggernaut doesn't keep going, because at the minute they look unstoppable. They look unplayable. But saying that, Australia have just racked up a big score in a warm-up game and got it chased down. So I'd love England to go there and win. It's not too dissimilar to English conditions. Is New Zealand? It depends on sort of which north or south part of the islands you go on. But I'd go England. I'm back in England. I hope the girls do really well. I don't know if you've seen what came out of the ICC, that if the COVID restrictions, and you know better than anybody, John, because you've been in New Zealand, for quite some substantial time in the recent past, that they've said if there's 9 players from a COVID point of view, they could continue the game. Now, I don't know about you, how you read that. Part of us wanted to make a joke of it. Part of us thought it's a bit patronising. I didn't really know how to go, because the reason why I didn't know which way to go with it, because women's sport for me is going so fast on a trajectory that it's going faster than the men's sport. I watch women's football. I think the quality of the football in the last 2 to 3 years is getting on a bigger scale, or it's going on a faster trajectory than the men's. I think the women's cricket is exactly the same. I think the women's cricket is as good as a game as it's ever been, because of the professionalism and the way they're playing, and the way that the best players are playing, or the best teams are playing against each other more often than not, and the pressure situations. And when the ICC brought that out, I just thought this is something the women's game didn't need, because there'd be a lot of morons try and ridicule it. And I just didn't. I really didn't know which way to go with it or take it, because I thought it was a little kick at the game, which didn't really need to happen. I might be just looking for something that's not there, but I was really disappointed when the ICC brought that statement out, that even if 9 players can play, you can still have a game. I didn't sit well with that one.
Yeah, I understand that, but at the end of the day, COVID has forced us to change everything, hasn't it? And the way we look at everything.
Would they have done that with men, though? Do you think the ICC would have come out with that with if it was the men's World Cup?
I think if there was absolutely no, I think it's difficult to say, but I mean, it's already been postponed once. It was supposed to happen last year. There's no way of continuing the World Cup if you don't make these changes. So as long as all teams are in the same boat, I kind of can understand it. It's such a look, we've had a World Cup, right? In 2019, England won the World Cup through boundary countback.
Mm.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It was a rule nobody even knew about before the Super Over was decided, it was even announced. As soon as the World Cup finished, it was quickly shelved. And I would say that was a more ridiculous situation to find yourself in than the one that we're coming into, because, at least we can blame COVID here. Can't blame COVID for that.
For that one, yeah. No, I get that. I just wouldn't like to see the World Cup final, and because of how far the women's game come. I'm just talking from an English point of view. How far the women's game's gone in the 100 this year was brilliant. It was 10 times better than the men's game, the 100. Yeah. And I just look at it and think, you know what? It's not something the women's game needs if there's a final of the ICC Women's World Tournament where 11 played 9. It's just
I agree, but I think the important thing is it takes place, and that looks like going to happen. Listen, we've come to the end of the show, and I'm sorry, Austin Cunha, we're not going to be able to talk about Virat Kohli this week, but we will next week. Ruben Logan Nathan asks about New Zealand in the Cricket World Cup, and oh no, actually, Ruben is asking about the men's team. The Tim Southey and Trent Bolt as well, not getting any younger. Even Matt Henry's past 30, so is Neil Wagner. Ruben, we'll talk about that next week. And Mr. India as well. Does Harmy support Virat Kohli? Well, we can talk about Virat Kohli next week. And we'll also be able to look back at some of the cricket as well. But for now, Harmy, if you're still watching on the channel, we're going to be releasing a brilliant test of time on Friday with yourself and your old Ashington teammate, Ashington teammate and friend Mark Wood. You're flying off to the Caribbean, and we're going to be bringing fresh content pretty much every day throughout the next month or so. So fly well. Thanks for having me back, and look forward to seeing you next week.